Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Hopefully, my voice is loud enough. I can't be too loud. Yet the idea wants to be released in the open, so I will share. The title of tonight's episode is The Winds of Evolution. And so I would like to speak about what it means to grow with existence, how there are moments in life where we have to watch and listen to life's activity prior to ourselves. So welcome everyone to the chat section. Just put MW in front of your comment and I'll know to straight answer to it. The winds of evolution, this idea has come to me in different ways. There was a time that I wanted to start a YouTube channel, a different one, where I have a notepad and a whiteboard, and I wanted to call that The Winds of Evolution. So the name is simultaneously, it resonates in that way for me, but the idea of it was that there was this giant work, this giant project I kind of started for myself where I call it the Pillars of Civilization. And it was a sort of analysis on what are the most important values in society. And for me, the winds of evolution, it fit into that picture in the sense that there is something being built here that is not per se an object or a subject, it's an event. There's an event taking place. Something I have never shared in these talks is that in 2013, I think, it was when I wrote before I gave these talks. I found myself in a situation where I was organizing my room and I was throwing, like, this is just, I'm going to share something personal, but like when I was cleaning my space, when I, like, for example, when I'm getting my laundry, I throw it in the air. When I'm like organizing clothing in my room, I throw the clothing in the air. And in 2013, I was listening to this Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, and I was throwing these cloths in the air, and there was a moment where the cloth hit my wrist and spun around it. And ever since that moment, there was a sort of relationship I've had with the wind in my experience, in my inner realms. Not in the sense that it's like I see wind, but just that there is something moving that can't be seen. That's the winds of evolution. It is the invisible build-up of the realm. I don't know, maybe in the future I might, if I have the physical energy for it, show you. Pretty much from there I discovered a unique way to, how would I explain this? It's I know this strange cloth dance and I don't know how to explain it. I just know it. So hopefully in the future I might be able to create a video of it at least and show it. But anyways, the winds of evolution, the idea that there is a movement moving the movement. The winds of evolution is the remembrance, the archaic revival of the logos in the mind of the human being. You see, there is a view where when the person is younger, they are dependent on a system. then they reach a point where the system depends on them, the evolution, advancement of the system. Then they return back to a lesser energetic framework where they depend on the system. So it's like when you're young, you need to depend on the system. When you're old, you need to depend on the system. The independence is really in between. It is the journey in between from the moment you notice you're a player in the game till the moment you step out of the game. Now, life has been made into a game. They've called it a rat race. People have different um, meanings from it. You know, there's some people who just want to go into the system and just, just to find a way where they're okay and not to engage the system. Some people are in the system because they want to leave the system, and some people are in the system because they realize regardless if they leave or not, the system will be here. That means just because you run away from a burning house doesn't mean you put out the fire. There was a time I was a bit astonished from immigration, the concept of immigration. Me personally, I'm an immigrant in Canada at the age of 7. My family moved from Iran to Canada, so I personally am an immigrant. Even though I'm a Canadian citizen, but there is that component as well. And there was a time I was thinking, why is there immigration? And you honestly see it's because certain systems are better, you know? And so we're going to either have this situation where all the people from around the world are just going to become centralized, they're going to all focus in coming to one place, or the whole world is going to update. And unless there's technological release, so for me, there's right now the concept of course, traveling, it's much more embraced and blessed. But just I had this thought, and I'm like, why aren't people staying where they are born? And you realize it's the lack of privilege. So the only way though people don't need to travel is if everywhere looks like everywhere, you know? If everywhere is to the same capacity. Imagine there were no developing nations. There was just humanity's presence, and certain parts of the planet humanity's presence was weak, and certain parts of the planet humanity's presence was strong. I don't know, I feel we are, of course, elemental beings, and because the elements are in a certain formation, there is a certain unique system at work. We're alive as individuals. The story of humanity is one where evolution got a direction. Can you imagine how much meaningless movement there was? There was a time where I got introduced to this idea in Zen that rather than a person trying to do something by rushing through it, the person should slow down their speed to try to do it masterfully. And this sort of mastery of observance before action. Can you imagine, like, if the universe was in no rush, everything would be possible? Human beings do not have control over a majority of the outer events in life, the outer realms. Right now I'm sitting on a porch, it's at night, I'm in a world, anything could happen. The outer realms have their own mind, but it is the inner realm in which we are allowed to be the witness of that system, of that mental activity. There are human beings on this planet. They are convinced by weakness. It is a good story. Weakness is a great salesman. The weakest people on this earth, they are great salesmen. Because you will be in the hyena psychology until you roar. And once you roar once, you never dishonor yourself after. You realize there's no point. That it's not a perfect system. Its perfection is dependent on how we navigate and utilize it. There are people who suffer from their minds, and there are those who use their minds. And when you use a tool, you suffer as long as it's in your hand. And what we know in this life is that everything we're holding, everything the person in this lifetime is considering of value, it has a life cycle. You could even consider the objective realm has a life cycle compared to your inner awareness. What does that mean? That means when you wake up in the morning, you're a candle. You're a flashlight in a dark room, in the dark cosmos. And many people, they know the flashlight is on, but they don't care about what it's lighting up. There is greater forces than human psychology. These forces are non-dual. At best, the way we can define them is that they are rhythmic fields, or they are fields of being with rhythmic entrances. That means, think of it this way. Imagine somebody is speaking a language that you don't understand, and they're explaining a story. Now imagine suddenly midway through explaining that story in a language you don't understand, they start speaking in a language you understand. It's suddenly like you got access. You got access once you knew what the language was. I honestly feel language is tuning the human antenna stoically. That means language, it's as if first there's the world, then there is observance of the world, then there is the defining of the world, then there's the transcendence. What does that mean? That means any game you play for a while, you want to move beyond. I feel this should be a law. This should be some sort of principle of nature, universal principle of nature. So guys, what I'm saying is that if we consider nature to be here first, and if we consider our comprehension to be limited of nature, Guys, what I'm saying is that there are various kinds of systems in place. Now, the human being opens its eyes in these systems. It is under the impression it is all one system. It is under the impression it all has to be one system that works, one system that's excellent, one system that's perfect. But when the human being realizes the realm is multidimensional, that there are ways the world is happening and there are ways that human beings are not seeing the world happening. There's many ways the eyes of human beings are moving. And so the way the eyes of human beings have moved, it has kept different technologies, different. Think of it this way, that whatever your ancestors paid attention to lived on. Whatever our ancestors as human beings paid attention to, we continued, we thrived. Now, if the human being has opened his eyes in a moving system, that means there's an intelligence to the system. All the people in society, every human being right now doing something. You can see humanity as a system, and they are being a dimension of it, a component of it, a memory of humanity. Now, your system, so there's a program before we were born. We are born and our own program starts. Now, the more our program identifies with the program that was here before it, the more it continues in this world. So that means if you, for example, renounce drinking water, you don't live long. So there are certain things that we have to appreciate, we have to honor about the world, as if we're on the giant back of a turtle, or we are on a dragon, sitting on a dragon, or whatever archetype, or somehow there's a stone, let's say stone saddle on the back of a phoenix, giant phoenix. Or an ice saddle, I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, there's something moving that regardless of what story we give to it, regardless of what we tell ourselves, it has a mind of its own. The world has a mind of its own and it's moving. Then there's the human being, the implementation of the individual mind to the system. And the value of an individual is to use that angle. So let's say you are seeing 90 degrees out of a 360 degrees out of a situation you're in, you know? So you can use that 90% to realize that if you added another, if you, I'm just saying every person seeing a part of the painting, that is an advantage which can help develop the brain of civilization. What do I mean by that? That means there is a physical outcome to human beings. What happens to the known particles of our body, our atomic being? And then there's a component which is it is event based. When life is no longer an event, it's no longer a story. That means it's no longer in time. So pretty much I'm saying, like, we can't put a timeless moment into a narrative. You know how sometimes in life situations happen and the person's like, alright, I gotta go talk seriously with that person to solve the problem or the dilemma, right? Sometimes in life the person has to find a moment where they become like the employer that is interviewing themselves. That means you literally sit back as an employee of any institution or wherever, and you're like, what kind of, if I was the owner of this company I'm working for, would I want myself as an employee? Whoever asks this question, your work's level performance will increase. There's this Persian kind of hilarious moral story that I heard in my childhood. There is a shoemaker, a very poor shoemaker, and this shoemaker goes to his son, who's also trying to copy his father, you know. And the shoemakers, after days of hard work, and the son seen how hard the father has worked, the father asks the son, excuse me guys, I hope the content shines more brighter than the additional noises. The father, this humble shoemaker, he looks at his son and he says, son, what do you want to be? What do you want to do in this life? Where do you want to go? And in that moment, the son looks at his father, looks at the hands of his father, you know, who's been working as a shoemaker, you know, being an honorable man, yet a humble, simple life. And he looks at his dad and he says, I want to be just like you, Dad. I want to be a shoemaker just like you. And the kid's like, my father's getting old. The father gets up in shock and gets angry and says, "What did you say?" And the father just puts his hands on his head as if he's failed. The son is startled by this. And he looks at his father and he's like, "Why? What did I say? What? Why? Why are you getting upset?" And the father says, "Son, when I was, he says, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a king. I ended up being a shoemaker. If you want to be a shoemaker, you're going to end up being nothing." And the kid snaps out and suddenly realizes why they say a fortune favors the bold. Because you're in this system once. The value of the day is not just an objective transfer or a subjective transfer. The value of the day is that it's a living event. Like if we were in the dream state and if I could just say something and the whole world would instantly change, that would be totally different discussion. But because the world is in a way where we wake up to it and it's still here, it's like the advanced communicator woke up and was like, little did he know that he lost his key. Imagine someone who's lost their keys, and imagine someone who wakes up from sleep and it's like, whoa, I came back from losing myself. Because I am telling you, the poet Rumi, the Sufi mystic poet, Rumi, Rumi, he says, there's an imagery he shares in his poetry where he says, if your hand is gripping something intensely 24/7, or if you just stretch out your hands, stretch out your fingers, you're going to see you can't keep the hand completely stretched out for too long. The muscle goes into paralysis, and you can't keep it gripped too much. That means in this life, if you let go too much, there is a sort of paralysis. If you try to grip something too intensely, there is a paralysis. The paralysis is simply because the person is trying to keep the past alive when the past has already finished its performance and now the future is coming. For me, this sentence, the future is coming, can you imagine? Can you imagine suddenly we see philosophers from all around the world running in the streets of humanity, shouting, imagine old school times with lanterns in their hand at night, shouting, people, it's coming, the event is coming. And people are like, what, man? The end of the world is coming. What are you doing? What are you saying? And the guy's like, no, the future. The future is coming. The greater human being is rising from the dirt of the lesser worlds. That means the most honorable thing, our task, is to be patient. That's the tactic of our phase in history. In this phase in history, it isn't per se much you need to have. Um, More than we need the search for inner truth, we need work in the inner realms. We need to activate human beings into the recognition that the past is image. But are you an image or are you more than an image? You're like, life isn't a picture on a wall. Life is a film. We're living in a film right now. And every person arises the way consciousness is positioned as the actor, the main actor. had this kind of radical, yet I think containing revolutionary power, this idea where I thought, there's some actors and directors where the directors have been directing the actors for years, and I thought there should be a switcheroo where the actors become directors and the directors become actors. Because when you think about acting in film, you're also thinking about human psychology's display, like how the program of behavior um, expresses fully, you know? There's a balance to life. And the greatest clue I have found, this balance is not conceptual. I think it is impossible to think there is a perfect food. I think it's impossible to say there is a perfect weather. That means there was a time I was looking at morality, I said this even to someone today, that the inner realms are like weather. What does that mean? That means, do you control weather? No. You can control wearing a jacket or taking an umbrella, but you don't control where it rains. Similarly, there are moments where, like for example, when I'm giving a talk, my voice is, I'm using words of a language, and when I use the words of the language in a rhythm, in my inner realms, I see a film. So honestly, for me, speech is finding words after seeing a film. That's the way my inner realms arises. So words evoke images. These images, if somebody says the word apple in front of you, like apple pie, you can't control. Like Sadhguru says this, the content of your mind is not your choice. That means when someone says apple pie, the image of the apple pie pops the moment the word sound enters your ear. So that wasn't a part of your choice, it was like the weather. It was like an image arose in your inner realms. There's times where I see people, and for me, in my inner realms, there's geometrical translation. Geometry for me was it is one of the great divine clues of this realm. And it is always honorable to pursue it. Geometry, let me tell you, just like so I'm from Iran, and the country Iran is a theocratical society. That means religion and politics have not separated. Church and state have not separated. So there is some people who look at this and they're like, that's disgusting because it's neither church, it's neither state, it's neither good politics, it's neither good religion, right? So there's a similar thing, that same metaphor, where it's like, it is true, every person has the capacity to do multiple tasks at the same time. Everybody can play 30 people in chess. Like, think about it. Like, if you were, let's say there were 30 tables and you were playing 30 opponents in chess, you could play all of them, but you wouldn't win. So you could just make random moves, and technically you played the game, you got through life. But at the same time, you can also make calculated moves in regards to noticing how the world is moving first. The whole thing about not meshing religion and state, I wanted to parallel that to something where the train of thought, I think I missed the train of thought, but there is a notion that thinking you're a mind is neither giving the full experience of the body and neither giving the full experience of the soul. And when I say body and soul, the soul is an archaic term, but you can just think it means unknown. The soul is like the missing link. It's the hard problem of consciousness where we're like, okay, why are we not conscious of the journeying of our cells inside our blood veins? Why are we conscious only of certain things? Why doesn't the person think about their heart, think about their breathing? They're just a natural entity, but then they think about their work and what they got to do in years from now, and even the afterlife and all this. So there's some things that are happening in accordance to nature's vision, nature's mind. The Gaian mind is preserving a lot of the nature. Now, we are, I keep have to bringing it to the idea of opportunity, because when you talk about something long enough, you talk about it through all the dimensions or the various dimensions that's possible. Not all the dimensions, but from the different angles it's perceivable. So, I can say the more sophisticated and advanced the human being becomes, the more of an advanced civilization it deserves. And we as beings, by the nature of being able to envision something better, by the nature of being able to see the angel in the stone like Michelangelo, this great sculptor, and setting the angel free. That means sculpting the statue out of the chunk of rock. You know, there's a view that we are sculpting meaning. That's why I was looking at knowledge and I'm like, yeah, there's no point of holding banners. There's no point of thinking you're an eagle only destined to be on one branch when you have wings. As the poet Rumi says, why prefer to crawl through life when you were born with wings? Why prefer to live as a violent savage, just animalistic limited being, when you have been given the gift of the gods? You have been given an antenna that could receive the sensory signals of this world, that information processes, that whoever's alive now listening, you have been born in a blessing, the blessing of an evolved so far state. So what I'm saying is, when I think about my ancestors, I laugh at my suffering. When I think about the future generations, I cry about my joy. Because you can smile as much as you want in a dying world, but when you see the void, it's not about a smile or frown attitude. It's about how real you were with life. That's it. It's the realness part of it. That's why I'm saying honesty should be second nature. Like let me tell you why. Because you want information you can trust. So the last thing, imagine what's hilarious. Check this out. Imagine some unique theosophist back in the day found a way to communicate to some interdimensional being. Now, you know what's even sillier than communicating with an interdimensional being? Lying to that interdimensional being. That means, what's the point of trying to communicate if you can't be yourself? You know, what is the point of being human if we don't get to actually be human? Let me tell you, everybody is a genius. Let me tell you why. Because genius is a correlation. It's an extraction. It's like genius, you can say, back in the day, all the miners were mining for gold. The guy who found it was a genius, you know? So I am telling you, it's finding patterns of that you can bring back to the tribe. For me, I had a vision. Like you might not believe it. There's like the energy I have to give these talks. It comes from just seeing this one vision in my inner realms, and I feel this urgency, and energy just arises. Because I'll be honest, guys, I have experienced a sort of edge of the minimalistic life. Not in the sense of the purest detachment from language, but the purest detachment from language is not bothered by language. So you see, everybody wants to be powerful, but they don't realize if they were powerful, they would also be okay being weak, being vulnerable, being a human being. You know, and we gotta understand, like, civilization is a prototype. Right now, what we're experiencing is the best blueprint so far. And I came and sat down and I'm like, what is this? Why isn't this updating? The same way we haven't created new letters to the alphabet, we have not created new dimensions in perceiving the value of the human being. And if we stop, we have gone closer. Like, you know what's even sad than extinction? Human beings going towards an inner extinction. That means we were so worried about not dying that we accidentally stopped being human. Imagine. So for me, the human life, the human biological design is like a sacred relic. I'm not joking. There was times where I would wake up in this world and I was just waiting for the winds to blow me away. Then when you trust your mind, you trust your intelligence, you know nature has also prepared itself for the battles it sets for itself, then something excellent happens. At the edge of despair, you find a mirror. At the end of failure, the harshest failure, you find a mirror. I'm not joking, guys. You find a mirror. And in that mirror, you see the same energy that has always been there to move. It's called the will, before the idea of freedom. There's an inseparability. Pretty much you can say, if we want to take a sort of ideological approach, it would be pretty much like, here's the thing. We are saying either there was meaning before language, or the language is the meaning. If the language is meaning, when you say somebody is bad, then it 100% means they're bad. But if it's not the language, the meaning, then it's as if life. Who said life is a good and bad analysis? Like, I'll be honest. You think a grizzly bear, excuse my language, but you think a grizzly bear gives a fuck, like, if you're scared or not? You think a grizzly bear, wild grizzly bear, wild animal in nature who's a savage? Do you think that savage animal cares? You know? It's like the person saved the tiger, and then it was like, wait a minute, is this tiger eating me? And realized the animal it didn't want to consume was consuming it. So I'm saying, like, I don't consider, like, the way I see, for example, when I eat meat, I do eat meat, but when I eat it, I don't lie to myself. I know that it's like, it's causing a demand for there to be more animals, more meat in the system, right? But at the same time, I'm considering it as a sacrifice of the great war of human evolution. That until we find some sort of juice, imagine in the future you just drink 3 glasses of juice and you have like the peak amount of energy in the day, better than any steak or elk meat you can eat. For me, there is the joys of the individual search. That means there's a way you gotta, I think everybody should practice this. You know, you should get comfortable sitting in a chair when you're alone, and get comfortable sitting in a chair in massive groups. I'm not joking. There's something about the vision of continuity, the strength of an idea that sees possibility. You see, I was it's as if like you want success, but then they're like you gotta hope for it, and then you're like you want hope, and then you're like, how do I get hope? And they're like, you gotta find some sort of inspiration, and you're like, how do I find inspiration? Then you realize it's all about your attention. Every person is the conductor of the orchestra of their inner realms, and the stick is the attention. If you realize the nature of your attention, as Zen Master Dogen says, to walk Buddha's path, you must study the self. That means the person in the mirror is your greatest homework assignment on this planet. To study the self is to forget the self, Zen Master Dogen continues. To forget the self is to awaken to the nature of all things. That awakening to the nature of all things is the headline of the news you would find if you turned on the TV of an advanced civilization and it wasn't defeat. We wouldn't be paying attention to our defeats, we would be paying attention to our victories. The world will be filled with victories. You know, every time in the news I see like a tragedy, I'm like, I know there was a victory on this earth. They're not. It's just not. People are not looking at it because you gotta. This may sound strange, but you gotta carry the weight of the world when you're existent. So you gotta play your evolutionary role as if being like, holy shit, this DNA of mine has been passed down to me. Imagine like your ancestors passed down to you a rare sword or a rare shield or a rare staff or a rare stone or whatever, like back in the day in certain fantasy novels we find. So it would be something you would hold in honor. Now I'm like, holy shit, don't people realize the greatest gift their ancestors gave to them is them? So I started becoming as rare as like an ancient samurai sword to myself. You know, my genetical content is very unique. It's as if like the puzzle I've been thrown in this corner of the world to solve. I honestly feel there is no, even though right now society is hierarchical, and Jordan Peterson makes a great point about this. However, the hierarchical institution is actually a system. It's a model. It's like a building that has a blueprint. What does that mean? That means you can always design different shaped buildings. It just depends if you're willing to do it or not. For me, in the future, I hope there becomes a law that makes it illegal to have houses or structures be designed in the shape of solids, like solid shapes, like a solid cube, like a sphere. Like it becomes illegal and it has to become abstract architecture, as if we're like, where are those people who splash art on a canvas, like with anger? The guy threw art on a canvas, and like that was Museum of Modern Art in New York. There was a picture like that. So I'm saying it's like, how do you update a system without being a part of it? How can you help um, the players in a game by not being a player yourself? You know, there was this idea. I remember seeing this picture. I was personally raised in a Islamic context, even though in my youth, when I was raised in Canada, it was a um, Christian sort of uh, like cartoons and the society and whatnot had a sort of Christian theme. But there was a picture I remember I saw that I had never seen this dimension to Christianity. It was a picture which some guy had drawn. It was like online. And the picture showed, let me see if I could find it. It was a picture of this drug addict like injecting with a needle something in his vein, but the part that was his hand, it was Christ. It was as if, let me see if I could find the picture. It was this picture of, uh, um, let me see if I can find it. Okay, guys. So sorry about that. I had to relocate. So, anyways, This is the picture I wanted to show you. This was the picture. Now, in this picture, it is as if the past, you know, like this picture is so heavy. That was the idea, that this is really religion's place in society. As Jordan Peterson said, religion has a narrative, a sort of narrative value. It doesn't mean that it is we should treat it as fact, but it means that it has a value, just like how all the stuff in a person's life has a value, just like how it is part of their being, you know, part of the way their mind is opened up. For me, I saw it as if the child opens its eyes in the world and waves of information hit it. So it's like, today you woke up, this wave of information hit you. This is how the senses arose, how they moved. There was another picture which I can't find. I was looking for it. Guys, I can't believe it. I found the picture. So this is the picture I wanted to show you. That's the whoever drew this picture understood the significance of events in the lives of human beings. And I think if we think about if only our life is important, then that is just, a sort of attention only on the self. So events are another way a human being can identify the world that is outside of the self. You see, so if the person can't see power in themselves, they can see an archetype of power and try to get close to that archetype. For me, just that whoever drew this, I don't know who the artist is, kudos to him. Let me see, there's a name for the artist. Oh no, it's a name of random people. Yeah, it's the name of the people in the picture. But anyways, so I'm going to show you the link here. But there's this idea of the intensity. You know what's going on here in this picture? Human beings are noticing a human language. That means all these people in this picture from different moments and points in history it's an event, you know. And so this was, you know, of course, this is a religion is our past. Literally, it began in the past. And you know what's even interesting? You see that guy gambling in the corner? The gambler doesn't even see the event. Is not even worried about the event. You know, in this picture, I see the evolution of the types of human behavior and sensitivities that human beings can have. Yet, these are events. Human beings care for life, but do they care for the unknown elements of life? We are such a knowledge obsessed civilization, such an information defined civilization, where it's as if any unknown mystery to reality is instantly covered with language. The mystery of our attention spans, the mystery of the unique range of perception compared to the whole range of perception we could have, that stands as a mystery. The mystery of what the next great languages will be, I feel the languages of civilization stretching. I mean, it's already happening, but like, there's this person named Mr.Within on YouTube who seems to be there's language. I just wondered about the evolution of language, and I noticed that everything that we have termed, every object that we have termed, we have given, like I'm right now looking at this keyboard in front of me, this mouse, this screen, this computer screen, these are words for objects. And I'm seeing this as if language is a simulation, so this object has an existence in my mind as a term. So I wondered about the evolution beyond this, and every object, even a snowflake, you look at it, I'll show you a snowflake under here, guys. If you look at the wallpaper, you'll see the picture I'm posting. Look at that. Just look at that. Imagine these objects are 3D, three-dimensional. They look like the most sophisticated engineers in a company worked. Let's say engineers in a company like 200 years from now, would what they would build would look like a design like this. What I'm saying is that what we call a snowflake, it has a dimensional value as the word snowflake. It has a dimensional value as the phenomenon snowflake, and then there is a geometrical dimension accessible. So if language is an attempt to give a symbol to phenomena, we are saying, like, so that means how far we can see suggests how far our language can go. So what that means is we are now noticing that we have access to a geometrical perception of reality, yet we can't do anything with it aside from draw beautiful art or notice it in nature. For me, geometry is the language of the inner realms. At least the way my inner realms have appeared. That means I have just like I've had memories, just like I've had memories of myself, let's say, I don't know, whenever in my childhood you can evoke a memory. I've had moments where I have the same way I have felt. I'm remembering a memory of myself. It was as if I was just movement of geometry. I was like a sort of, even I would say in my inner realms, we have access beyond 3 dimensions, even beyond 4 dimensions, I would say. There is a sort of attributeless witness behind the eyes of the human being. That it's as if at its core, it is the honesty of just energy being conscious of itself. That means it's like the person saw the evil, saw the good, but then also saw energy. And it's like, well, yo, which side is energy on? And energy was just being energy. Good and evil were fighting. The supervillain and the superhero were fighting, destroying the city. Yet, energy was just, going to the store to get coffee or something. Yeah. So it's a situation where there is a level of human suffering that instantly evaporates when you notice yourself to be an energetic being. That means it's like energetically, can you feel like, can you like, or even existentially, can you go to someone and say like you exist more than them? No, we're all existing, we're all in the part of the game. We're just piloting in this game at different elevations. And certain work of mine, I gave it the image as if, imagine this giant dragon, and human beings are born, and each of them who's born is holding one part of this dragon, and imagine the dragon has fur or something. You know, one of those white dragons you see with fur and what. So every person's holding on this dragon, and some people are at the bottom of the dragon, the people who are in the difficult part of society, and there are people sitting on the top of the dragon. Do you know? And so what does that mean? That means for me really it's like for a second imagining as if your species is your family and being like holy shit, like how many intense elevations are human beings going through? And so what does it mean? Does it make sense to just make a utopia, or do we have to the dystopia is going to be a sort of strange utopia, like chaos is going to bring freedom? I don't know how. I don't know how chaos has ever brought freedom. Because the action has a karma, has an effect. So geometry is what we have not really wondered about, living geometry as a sort of, I would say, fifth dimensional language. Because the third dimension is space, the fourth dimension is time. That means like you can go into the same, you can sit on the same chair at two different times of the day, and the only thing separating those events as what's actually happening is time. Time is actually a dimension which we need for the inner realms. The outer realms, it's actually happy existence is like one giant event of change. So, anyways, what I'm trying to get to is that there is a depth to this world that is still untapped. It's like uncharted territory, pretty much. Now, back in the day, we were hunter-gatherers. We would go find like external resources and tools, and we'd be like, holy shit, berries, and we'd bring berries to the civilization. The civilization would be, no way, we could have had berries this whole time. And so the tribe, the hunter-gatherer tribe would advance based on the findings of the hunters and the gatherers. Now, in this modern times of ours, it's become strange. It's become strange where the gatherers are idolizing the hunters. Rather than hunter-gatherer both having a value each in their own domain, it's as if everybody just feels like, yo, that works. Yo, let's run that way. That system works. Yo, let's run that way. That system works. You know? But that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know what it feels like? Life feels to me, I think this is how my own transition out of this plane is going to feel like. It's going to feel like as if when I was very young, and I remember me and my brother were playing, like my cousin and just the, this is me being very young. We were playing soccer in the street or some parking lot area. And it was that moment where it was lunchtime or something, and we were called in. Just my cousins, my brother, we all just ran in, you know? And so that's what it feels. It feels like I am participating in an event, that the curtains will be pulled at some point, whether the person likes it or not. That means really, it's like you can say the most mystical moment is there. Let's say the entrance and the exit. They're the most mystical points in the system. When you enter a new world, you see the unknown. When you leave the world, you notice the unknown. So if a human being can actually study the unknown as an explorer and an advanced communicator, not as some like esoteric costume game. Reality is is a one-time event. That's why it really deserves its honesty. The winds of evolution are how human intelligence has been animate and has a overall collective analysis, you know? It's like we have, it's as if wondering about, it's very easy to be proud of the self. It is much more complex to be proud of the civilization. That's the next joy. We have lived as individuals. We have experienced individuality. We have experienced our objecthood. We have experienced through our speech and communication our subjective world traveling. And so it's an incredible question. On one level, it's like this mystery of like, all right, what's after an object we saw was a subject? What's after a subject? So I've considered there has been an objective evolution. The way I look at evolution is a bit different than traditional Darwinism. For me, the significance of the objective evolution was the creature. The significance of the subjective evolution was the creature noticing itself in some sort of mirror effect. And the next evolution, I felt it was going to be the evolution with an infusion of the unnatural. What does that mean? That means the cyberspace collective mind could be our next evolutionary phase. Terence McKenna, as much as he's a shaman, he said it himself in one of his lectures that he felt there's a potential that we can be, and the human biological life is an intermediary for machine expansion all over the universe. That means human beings were actually not built for for the purpose of the cosmos. It's as if we are a phase. We're just the Earth is going through a phase, guys. That's why we're in this situation. I've thought about what will happen to human beings. I have wondered about what has happened to human beings before I was born. I have wondered about what will happen after, and now I am only The present is where I have really access. For me, it's like, how do you build a long-term project as a creature that oscillates between consciousness and unconsciousness? That means every day you build something and you say goodbye to it, you return back from the void, you rebuild it, and you say goodbye to it, and it's like every day, this sort of journey of contribution to the design that is the life of the person. For me, it was there was something I noticed in psychology, that people's psychology is raised in the light of others. That means a lot of people, they haven't actually looked at life. Their behavioral expression is based on other ways of behavior they've seen. I mean, this is natural. I believe there's something, you can call it like the Transformers effect in human psychology, where just like the Transformers saw a better car and transformed to it, the inner realms is not a shape. I feel because we're watching our life, we can choose to identify with different parts of it. But by identifying with a part of it, we do take away our attention from other parts. That means the moment I think materialism has the answer, or the moment I think only immaterial, the answer is immaterial, then it's as if I have left the scholar's table. I have denied space access to I have denied the space within you. That means it's like, I don't know. I'm really trying to visualize, not even visualize, like I have a sense. I have a sense like I've fathomed how different species on different planets could potentially evolve. I've even fathomed different parallel potentials. That means you look at history and you see a different way it could have happened, and that gives you an answer to how that, if that pattern resurfaces in history, what is the solution to it? Do you know what was the missed angle before? You know. I'm going to read some quotes for you now, which are Zen oriented. And you can say the insight of Zen is that Zen understood what was in the sight, and it was a direct experience of emptiness. It's like you don't fear a roller coaster ride after you've been on it. Rumi, we carry inside us the wonders we seek outside us. The way, Confucius, the way out is through the door. Why is it that no one will use this method? Yeah, because there is an angle one can have in any situation in life, where they're like, in any problem where they're like, okay, how did I get here? How did I get to this point? So that means you try to find the door of the archetype you've entered in. And you find the door, you can step out of it. You don't find the door of the archetype, then you'd be ideologically bound to a narrative. So I'm that person where both the secular society I find and the religious societies of this world, they're looking at me and they're like, okay, it's like I'm saying language. Everything so far has been language worship. That means there was objects that we thought they were truth. It was called idol worship. And what do you think we moved on after the idols were slapped out of our hand? Idea worship. So I am not an idea worshiper. I'm that person in this historic event of this moment saying that really language is the tip of the iceberg. You want to fight over the tip of the iceberg, be fools till the end of time. Because this civilization, a person, even you could think of like being really evil and controlling it, and then you're like, what am I, like, what are you controlling? An unupdated civilization? Like, if we were an advanced civilization, I could understand being a dictator, but like now the only thing people need is like just activate their freedom of their minds and let talent do the rest. That means that's all what the political system needs to do to assist the citizens' efficiency, because it's the people that build the civilization. You know, there's a quote from Taoism. They say, once the leader's task is done, the people will say, "We did it ourselves." That means the leader doesn't care about the visible. The leader cares about the visible, but doesn't care about being visible as an outcome. Do you see? That means the events is the significance. You know, it's like holding the door open for, the elderly. It just makes you feel like a champion. It makes you feel like back in the day, like a knight saving someone from like a chaotic situation. You know what I mean? You know what would be sad, that we were human beings, but we didn't appreciate it. That all the moments, in every moment on this planet, that there is, let us say, discrimination, racism, some sort of conflict, is as if that's occupying the space for efficiency. As if you're wondering, yo, bad guy, it's like, where else can your energy go? What else it's like there's one way. Some people who, they look at this world and they just see themselves and they're like, what do I need? What do I want? And then there's some people, they're like, what does the world require now? That means it's like some people see this world as a workstation. Some people see it as a place, in some sense, where, as if like the whole story of their life is. For me, it's as if, how many stories you can identify, in how many ways you can animate yourself and have been animating in your inner realms. It's all like your attention is like a spotlight, and different designs have been moving forth, as if thinking every idea can translate into a geometrical shape. That means, do you know what a geometrical language would mean? A geometrical language would mean you would look at the architecture of the building and you would see as much poetry as a paragraph written, you know? If we care, we evolve. Whatever you don't care about, you don't evolve. It's the same thing with human beings too. Honestly, if the parent doesn't care for the child, then it's as if, like, let me tell you, suffering is required, but if you can't care, if you don't, it's like, there was this, one of my favorite comedians is this guy named Sebastian Maniscalco, and he says, like, at the age of 8, his Italian Sicilian father came to him and and said, "Go start a business. What are you doing? Go start a business." And he's just 8 years old. He doesn't know what to do, and he was acting it out. So you see, that means there's a difference between it's there's no such thing as a teacher. There's just human beings who care. They care not only for sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes the way I have cared for something, like someone has behaved in a certain way, and in my angle, if I wanted to go just based on my inner realms, I'd be like, what is this? You know? I'd be, for example, offended, right? But then I think about, is it just my inner realms? Is my inner realms the only thing in the room? And I realize no. And I realize that human beings, whatever we're doing, whether good or bad, it's just to get by. And there's so many moments like even the most evil guy had to take a break and use the bathroom, you know what I mean? Like we're all human. It's just that if we wear too much of an extreme costume, we unnaturally correlate to the world. So for me right now, when I see a person from any part of the world, for me, they are as if a creature where different waves of information throughout their life and experiences have sculpted them. That means I honestly, there was a time where I was so naive, I thought I knew people. I thought I knew people. Then when I realized it takes, like, you can never see someone the way that you see themselves, then I was like, okay, this is why the idea of like traditional marriage, it kind of made sense, you know, that there was an unknown to both individuals. That means it took a lifetime to get to know a person. Imagine. Imagine all the friends, every person you know, that you've just accessed certain dimensions of their expression, yet they are journeying through vast oceans of change. In a book I'm writing called Civilization 2.0, Sky Cities, Earth, Heaven, and the Heavenized Earth and Advancements Beyond the Language Threshold. I believe that's the title I went with. And so in it, I share a story, just a beginning story, like as an epigraph, and like some in the place of the epigraph. And the story is about imagine this boat, this giant ship, so giant, ends of it can't see each other, and there's 8 billion human beings in this giant ship, you know? And the ship is even like, it's like even not rectangular. You can even see it as cubic or whatever, like a giant ship where human beings are on. Now, one part of this ship has holes in it, okay? Or, so I'm saying that one part of this ship, imagine, has holes. There's 8 billion people on this boat in unknown waters, okay? And we're in a system. That means nature has its own mind. Nature is steering the boat. That means regardless of whatever the most good or evil person does, nature just goes forth. Nature is the ultimate outcome. Nature doesn't care for human ignorance. Does nature? Does nature? What I mean by that is that means the karma of chaos is harsher chaos. That means, think of it this way: if the person we take let me the story of the boat thing is, some part of the people don't, one part of the boat has no clue the boat is sinking, one part of it has a clue the boat is sinking, okay? And in life there is the case where you have the archetype, the good archetype, and then you see the bad archetype come and disturb the good archetype. Now the good archetype is like, you're gonna get justice one day, to the bad archetype. But the good archetype is the perpetrator has defeated the victim. The good archetype has become the victim of the bad. You know, because the bad is hitting first. So if you wondered about the justice, the karma of chaos, it is a bigger chaos. That means it's not per se. It's as if there is always giants in the room. What does that mean? That means for a long time, I was like in one of my talks, I shared this idea where too much freedom can lead to chaos. And I also saw the reverse design of the idea, and I thought about too much chaos leading to freedom. And then I realized, how could this be possible though? How could like how can you, if you fight fire with fire, how does the fire become less? Like when an evil fights evil, how does the evil become less? They're both evil, you know? And you see the evil on a program psychological level becomes less. That means you can think of it as a designer where we are being human, and then we are being a type of human based on our behavior, action, conditioning, and whatnot. So there is just the design, and then there is how the design is moving. Now, how the design is moving, which is our free will and decisions, is setting us apart, in the landscape, in this existential landscape. But the person's attention is non-local because the subject is witnessed. So I'm telling you, the center of this world and this universe is unknown. For me, a person can prepare before the storm arrives. That is honestly the situation if we want to salvage and protect human nature from artificial uh, subconscious domination. That means we have to implement in a system that is deviating from natural patterns. And natural patterns in a system where it's like the concrete jungle, the animals are on a psychological level. People are very civilized, very, very normal on the street. But when it comes to actually communicating or moving around or doing events, then it's as if like realms are on the same. It's like there's a saying, they say that you can't have two tigers can't live on the same mountain. As if two teachers can't teach one student. The student is just going to be like, who am I? So that is the thing. And the wiser tiger knows, if the tiger that cares for the student will know what teacher is best for the student. This reminds me of a Zen story. Back in the day, very back in the day, in Japan, there's a girl who suddenly her parents are angry at him, are angry at her. Her parents are shouting and they're saying, how could you do this to us? Don't you know our reputation? Don't you have any honor for the family? How could you do this? Don't you realize we got face in the streets? We got a face in the streets. And so the girl is so overwhelmed that she looks at the parents and says, I'm sorry, I'm pregnant. It was the neighbor. She's reaching a point where the father's like, is it the guy from the fish market? And it's like, and the girl lies. Pretty much that's the story, where the girl lies to her parents and she's like, no, it was the Zen master, is the father. Right? And the family doesn't have even a sort of enough of an income vitality to even take care of a child. Right? So what the parents do is they go storming into the Zen master's place, and the Zen master's just sitting meditating. Just a very simple man. Like in a sort of monastery-like situation. I don't know if he was in a monastery, but it was like some sort of place of Zen. The parents go storming in, and they're being like, "You're a sick man. How could you do this?" It's like, oh, sorry, guys. Sorry. I messed up the story. The girl isn't pregnant. She has a child. Okay? And the whole point is she doesn't want to tell the truth, and she lies and says it's the Zen master, but it's a grown child. I forgot. Not a grown child, like a very young toddler, let's say. Not toddler, but like a young child. Let's say 7-year-old child. And the whole point is the parents of the girl take the child to the Zen master, and they're like, "You did this. This is your kid. We can't take care of the kid." And it's like they just scold him. They're like, it's like, "How dare you dishonor us, you piece of shit." And the Zen master's just silently watching, you know. And the Zen master sees this situation where, as if their minds are so made, so convinced, that it's as if he's like, he knows it's not his child, but he sees that the mindset of those people the child was around is like something. And this how the story unfolds is that the Zen master the child stays in the Zen with the Zen master, and the Zen master, like, the child becomes like an excellent meditator. Years go by. The girl gets so much guilt. She gets so much guilt that she can't hold it in, and she says it was the guy from the fish market. It's always, someone from the fish market. It's always someone who's selling fish, who's selfish. The parents hear the news. They're like, "Holy shit, this girl lied." Like, why? That's even more dishonor. You know, Dishonesty is really a dishonor. That means the person. It's like the instant way you can know if someone cares or not is to see if you can tell if they're being honest or dishonest. Because if they're being honest, they're comfortable looking through their eyes. If they're being dishonest, the person is not comfortable looking through their eyes. They go to the Zen master. The kids become like so disciplined and like next level, like concentration and whatnot. And the parents come to the child, to the Zen master, and they're like, "We're sorry, we made a mistake. Our foolish daughter lied to us, and we want the kid back." And the Zen master just like kind of bows to the kid, very simple. And the kid just stares at the Zen master and just goes. The kid goes with them, you know. Because in this life, there are, of course, variables of attachment and detachment from any system, from any moment that's arising. I treat biology as a biological system, Therefore, if we consider the biology is leading to the reception of the signal of intelligence, that means free will requires boundaries to work with, therefore implying its systematic nature. So I would say free will is a certain complex emergence tip of the iceberg of nature, natural intelligence. Yet, whether you imagine the tip of an iceberg or a castle where suddenly the king's like, wait a minute, are there more? How big is this castle? The king began digging the walls of the palace only to see the castle went to the center of the earth, and it was this giant castle, hidden in the earth, where the castle that people saw outside was just the tip of it. Alan Watts says, this is the real secret of life. To be completely engaged with what you're doing in the here and now, and instead of calling it work, realize it as play. In a playful state, guys, you are in a world of greater potential usually. That's where the joy comes from. Shiri Chinmoy, if you have inner peace, nobody can force you to be a slave to the outer reality. That's very true. If you realize that there is a presence to your attention regardless of how personality animates and appears, like even when the person says my mind, that means they are not the mind. Saul, Saul, Bellow. A great deal of intelligence can be invested in ignorance when the need for illusion is deep. Eleanor Roosevelt. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Wow. Incredible sentence. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Doesn't get more next level than that. That means you gotta care for the important and the beautiful. And now more than ever, emotional sensitivity, emotional stability is a priority. Compared to intellectual precision towards complex fixed narrative positioning. It's like the discussion on the dimensions of beauty, even that there is an inner beauty and an outer beauty. The outer beauty, of course, it's comparative, just like you see the whole fashion industry and clothing industry and just all the types of ways that human beings are trying to express themselves through color and visuals, aesthetics. I look at my human body, I look at the body that is of this human being in this moment, and I see history. You know, our atoms are, in some sense, ancient. What I am made of, the outer realms are way more ancient than the inner realms. Reality is a film that in the conscious waking state we can direct. In the dream state, you can direct it, but not as a form. You can direct your dreams in your dream states as attention, though, as the presence of attention. So you see, there's some skills that are known born, and there's some skills that are unknown born. There's some moments where its value emerges because the potential is in the moment, in the design of the moment, and there's some moments where it's as if the potential arises as given or as received. It was as if this notion of healing that certain circles of thought entertained, where they were like, it wasn't that the person has to give energy from himself or they have to get rid of energy. The notion of it is that energy can be pushed into other dimensions if a multi-dimensional framework is considered. You know, as if the person can instantly imagine in their inner realms, poetically, I'm saying this is like entertain, this is just a visualization. In the inner realms, the person can envision suddenly like a wavering white light portal opening, or some sort of portal opening, and suddenly everything, like every negative karma being vacuumed into that. You know, that means the inner realms have a freedom of handling how the outer realm means something. The greatest thing one can, I feel, conclude about their inner realms is really where they reach a point where there is no longer an inner and outer conceptually. That means for the inner, there is no outer. And because there's no outer, how can there be an inner? So if you become the unknown viewer within, you realize that. You realize like the unknown is happening. At the same time, your knowledge is happening. The winds of evolution, where will they take us? Some say towards the inconceivable. Some feel we will never escape this conceivable simulation. Some people feel that the problem was never from here. So guys, Plugaru says consciousness is an internal awareness of the whole ? Consciousness is awareness to form. Awareness is awareness beyond form, therefore the awareness doesn't have a condition to it. That's why we need to put the word self-awareness or world-awareness, you know? Plugaru, I will tell you this, that consciousness, in this moment, the picture I can paint for it, is an event where you're oscillating between self-moving world and world-moving self. AKA the winds of evolution moving the leaves of manifestation, temporarily connected to everything. For me, this life has a poetry to it, a poetry that the mystery hasn't vanished. I think that was the blessing of being born in 1991, where it was it was as if my childhood was outdoors and also at the earliest pioneering of the video game era. So for me, like if there was a museum of video game consoles, I would be in the very like earliest Sega level. You know, I can see how back in the day people wanted to climb trees. Now people want to climb digital trees. And the less human we are in behavior is also a suggestion of the more space we will have to define a new humanity. So right now, we're all terrestrial beings on this earth. But imagine in like, I don't know, a couple hundred years, we have extraterrestrial beings. And so extraterrestrial immigration, like extra, we see on the news, oh my God, did the president of, let's say we're some collective humanity by then, did the president of the collective, or not president, but like, did the handshake of humanity, did humanity shake hands with an alien civilization and we now have interplanetary immigration policy? That means aliens are allowed to be members of the human civilization and humans are allowed to be members of that alien civilization. So imagine in the future, the United Nations, in one of my science fiction novels, I've written this in The Messenger of Giants, where the United Nations has a galactic scepter and an alien is shouting to human beings, and it's shouting and saying like, how dare you not say aliens are part of, are human beings, my ancestors have all lived on Earth, like it's like a humanoid, let's say half humanoid alien, you know, and the UN speaking. So it becomes a situation where we are always moving and updating. So as long as life updates, there's no point of fighting over the past, really. You know, seldom is this said. Maybe world peace will happen if the world isn't in pieces. Because if it's in pieces, the pieces can fight endlessly. You know, they said divide and conquer, but that strategy doesn't always work. That tactical approach doesn't work, because if you're a solo person, if you're fighting one on one, dividing and conquering means you've made one opponent into two opponents. So the more you divide and conquer, the more you got to hold, the more you're on the defensive. The more your mind unifies and integrates, the more you're on the offensive. The more you look at this life, and it's like you're not soloed out in a sort of narrative. Your antenna is picked up as a signal. You'll realize reality has a freedom, and its freedom is change. That means, what greater teaching is there than watching change? I mean, somebody tell me, please. What greater lesson in this realm is there, that we get to see ourselves change? Maybe that's the joy of it. You know, there's a term in the Vedic tradition, Satchit Ananda. Existence, conscious existence is bliss. Any human being who they become aware that there is the simultaneity of a conscious subject, or as Rene Descartes would say, the isolated thinking subject, and it's like the simultaneity of an existential dimension with its own program. So our mind, or our psychologies, is a symbiosis of of nature, of a biological program, and epigenetics factors that transcend the environment's effect. That means there could be a lion in Africa eating a gazelle right now as I'm talking, but I don't feel the pain, or I don't feel the adrenaline, you know, or the intensity of it, you know. So life is this massive system that is occurring in different ways. We've tend to traditionally, I mean, even now it's becoming old as the years go by, but it's this notion of, it's like, for how long do we keep playing the good and bad game? Where it's like, when would the secular civilization attempt to build a new established ethos, a prototype for a better way the whole whatever's emergent in the system can abide by? Because let me tell you, there was something back in the day. It was the honor. It was a notion of honor. So you see, there's a view of kings from back in the day that they were weak kings because they used fear. That means if there were kings like trying to show off the king, that his kingdom loved the king, and the kingdom, that his kingdom feared the king and had power, it's as if they were totally different. Let me tell you, love is strong, so it gives freedom. Fear is weak, so it has to take freedom. Back in the day, chemistry class was short. Pretty much the teacher would come in and say, all right, guys, the world is pretty much made with earth, air, fire, water, and ether, these five elements, you know, the archaic mindset of the elements of the realm, of the outer realm, and the teacher would say these are the five elements, pretty much. This is the periodic table, you know, for now. And if you have any questions, go find a time machine. Literally, like, this is how far history's evolved. I feel just like how the yogi meditated to find a control over the elements, which meant an expansion of the experiential responsibility. That means it's like an athlete realizing the same goal-oriented intensity and creativity they had with, for example, the soccer ball dribbling and scoring. That same creativity was an urge towards a goal. And really what sets out skill is is those that dared attempt the uh, dared attempt to break the ceiling. I'm just saying that we as human beings stepped out of a natural environment and we built our own ecosystem, and now we're thriving in our ecosystem, we're living in our ecosystem. Now I'm saying humanity is moving towards paying attention to the inner ecosystem, which is very crucial at this time. I'm telling you, like, you can see an importance in advancing external technologies, and you can see an importance in advancing internal technologies. So if you really wanted to advance the inner technology, that means you would have to look at the outer with ultimate freedom. That means there's a view where you give freedom to someone because you like them, and there's a reason you give freedom because you don't have time not to give freedom. You have to give freedom to the world that you want the world's victory. That means if you want the self's victory, it's fine. You could be cruel. You could be evil or whatever. But like, if you want the world's victory, then you got to be the eagle in the sky. So human beings, every human being, this is the value of meditation in modern times, that it's like you find a moment in the day when, similar to how the yogi went towards stillness and silence to become observant of the movement and the noise and the emergence of meaning. Similarly, the eagle flies into the sky, and as it flies into the sky, it's as if the human being, like, honestly, I would say, after prioritizing building sky cities as the most important technology, I would say jetpacks. You know why? Because people could just fly 200 meters into the air and just look at life and be like, whoa, we're just creatures on this rock, and relax about it all. Because I notice this, most people want to experience something unique, but really the whole thing is strange. That means it's as if normality was the hoax of childhood. That there is nothing normal about being on a sphere in the middle of nowhere as 8 billion temporary creatures. There's nothing normal about that. That means I laughed. I laughed when I realized there's certain words that they would, if there was a battlefield of true actually wondering about them, they would lose their meaning. That means it's as if really we cared about the mind of civilization. As Ludwig Wittgenstein says, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. So we would care for the language expanding the limits of the inner realms of people. You know? I feel language is taking the place of the elements. I feel imagination is like controlling the elements, like the airbender idea. You know, like the concept of the person who their free will was also the will of the environment. You know, You could say, for example, Genghis Khan. Some people called him like the storm, like this dude. Whenever, like, there's a quote from Genghis Khan. I was like, no way. Like this guy would, the way he would control his, of course, his method was fear, and he would say, I am God's punishment when he would go and conquer kingdoms. I'm God's wrath. And I was like, yo, this guy's like this guy got hit too hard as a kid. So, I feel there should be this really general view that history writes itself if it feels it deserves it. That there in this life, what is valuable is not just the image you have before the eyes transition. It is this noticing the significance of the event, a freedom to let the world breathe, and then you notice your own breath. The winds of evolution, the visions that advance humanity. It is now more than ever important for people to go and buy a notebook. Go buy a notebook and just find some moment in this life to just sit down, look at life. I recommend early in the morning with a cup of tea, but like very early in the morning where the sky is blue. And you realize that that notebook is life. And the only way that notebook can be filled is if you write it. And that's another way of saying the only way you'll feel fulfilled in life is if you live it. And so that means it is no longer distinct to the person's class, creed, race, or sex, or anything like that. It's just the notion that art is free in the sense that design, we are designers. I'm speaking to the world as if we're all 8 billion designers. That means stories haven't come into play yet. Biases, prejudices haven't come into play yet. We're just looking at the realm and noticing design and the change and the positioning of this design and the implication of it, because it is as if it's strange. We're looking in a system for meaning, but the one looking for meaning is self-generated. So we are self-generating the world that we feel is generating us. So that's the challenge of trying to see what do we do with the simultaneity of consciousness, that it seems to be as if matter is moving towards the matter is a sort of causal point and its effect is mind, and then there's a view where the mind is the causal point and the effect is matter. And I'm saying we're in simultaneously, in the sense that we have two eyes that see the same, that same way we are. These are the two ways we're oscillating in the realm. Because for me, I was like, what is the difference between nature moving, or me thinking it's God moving, or me thinking it's the laws of nature moving, when it's just moving? Do you see where the event has a value and significance before the subjectification of it? And honestly, it's like you're either getting fascinated by the outer realms or the inner realms. I don't know what else is there. Like, content wise. When we hear the symphony of an advanced civilization, that's all that any human being can ask from one another. that care for the songs being played, care for the instrument that your DNA is, and master the rhythms that will be songs the whole civilization wants to hear. You see, we ever since the information revolution, we have cared. It's our value system changed. You see, it's as if like back in the day, the person just wanted to find some food to eat. Now the person is not thinking about survival on that intense level, and it's like the person is looking, let's say, the same way. If the stomach digests food, the brain seems to digest sensory perception, perception, vision. That means the force of your vision is the roar of your heartbeat. So anyways, guys, honor the winds of evolution. Honor how far the species has come. Honor how far you will take it. And just honor the glow that is worth keeping around. That means even if, let's say, an alien civilization came and was like suddenly got offended by something the human world leader said, and there was a street smart guy there. He's like, he goes up to the alien, he's like, hey man, listen, we don't know, you don't know, let's relax. And then imagine the alien who wanted to take it, like invade the civilization, was like, yeah, that's right, let's relax. And that was the random street smart person who saved the species from invasion. Somebody go make this story, you know what I mean? Honestly, it's service. Rabindranath Tagore hit the ball out of the park when he said, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that it was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. Service, when joy becomes a sort of service, you will experience what it means to be an avatar of your own vision. There's this, I remember laughing so hard. I was looking into Tibetan Buddhism. There was a phase of my life where I feel I broke the record of being the most Tibetan Buddhist Persian guy in the planet. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a very profound sage named Tilopa. Tilopa, as if some bewildered person comes to him and is like, how do I get out of this suffering? And Tilopa is not giving him a teaching or a technique. Tilopa is saying, let go for a second, not forever, but just for a moment. Let go and rest. There is no teaching. That means in this life, when it comes to experiential advancement, yeah, nobody, you can listen to my talks as much as you want, but it's your own eyes that have to lift off. When you realize that, then you'll understand what I mean, that there's the winds of evolution are sort of the rhythms of wonder of, okay, so what is the world now, and what is the next dimension, evolutionary advancement of it, Because I don't, even though if we consider we're really evolutionary beings, our evolution was in the hands of the environment. So that means ever since we left the natural environment, we have become our own evolutionary update. So either we go back into the jungles and nature and update with nature, at nature's pace, or we, in some sense, if we have chosen to step out of nature, we step out of it properly. And that means aim interstellar. Whoever you are, aim interstellar. The civilization's heading there, whether you like it or not. Like, that's the best outcome, you know? Because moral systems based on narratives that don't relate to the modern times are incapable of fully handling the system. That means I wouldn't be surprised if in 2000, like when super intelligent computers come around after 2045 or 50, as Ray Kurzweil, this futurist, suggests, the technological singularity, I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I think when that happens, I mean, of course, nobody knows what's going to happen after that, but like I'm saying, it's going to become a point where right now human beings are leading human beings. You know, it's as if like the civilization is like they're all players on in a game, and the leader of the civilization, let's say, is a coach. Now the coach is coming to the players on the civilization and saying, now we're reaching a point, you know, imagine. It's like, what can you do with the colors of a fading world? Paint. You can only paint. You can just paint on. That's the greatest teaching in this realm. Continue. Go forth. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to share the Discord link, and blessings. You know, every person is also responsible for their own eyes. So that's the cool thing about piloting your attention. You actually stabilize as an individual. So that means we require individuality before we can even speak. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Blessings. And sorry, guys, one last thing to say is the ultimate biological purpose of life is to experience the newest evolutionary update. So now that the evolutionary update can be in our conscious control, that means we have to observe the environment. That means the mind is being the God for the body, you know. So you can say the body's God is the mind, the mind's God is the soul, the soul's God is the unknown, the inconceivable. The ultimate states, that means like part of the spectrum, there are certain dimensions we can go and we may even experience emotions from it, but they are not conceivable. They are more like fields of memory. Right now, if somebody tells the person, remember a memory from your past, now imagine somebody says, remember 5 memories from your past at the same time, all playing at once, like as if like on 5 different screens. So you see, it's as if suddenly The person who had a linear relationship of past future sees that they can remember multiple events. So for me, if the person closes their eyes and in that just stillness and silence is wondering, okay, so what is the point of imagination now? The inner realms is like a sphere, or I could say it is like you are like a lighthouse, and from the distant designs emerge. And when these designs emerge, the more you care about something, the more you have chosen to see it. That means it's like it's as if like the difference between true love and mature love. Sorry, true love and blind love. Blind love is self-made. True love is like no caring. It's like one is caring for itself, the person is caring for themselves more. The other, they have seen the actual person. So you can say blind love is when you are not in love with the actual person, you're in love with the idea of the person. you know and true love is when you have actually seen you know their soul, if I can say that. There's a letter that Charlie Chaplin wrote to his daughter. I just want to see, like, I think it relates to what I'm saying. I think it's along these lines. Imagine somebody asked Charlie Chaplin, how did you build your empire? He's like, by eating shoes, man, by eating shoes. There we go. So this is a quote from Charlie Chaplin, a letter to his daughter, Geraldine. Your naked body should belong only to those who fall in love with your naked soul. That means I feel there's no point being artificial when life happens once. That's the true, I think, the honor that civilization is missing out on. That every moment requires to be seen as the ultimate. Like, what I mean by that is as if like you can have a Zen approach where you're trying to do everything masterfully and mindfully and slowly, not even rushing it. You're just trying to do things, and then like on a momentary level, and then there's a notion of like you want to achieve something in the past, so then you don't care about how you get it. So you can say the more outcome oriented you are, the more potential for cruelty you have. But the more moment to moment sort of psychological display the person has, then there's less possibility of cruelty because there's more possibility of instant change. So anyways, guys, that was the point I wanted to make before I end up. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be on Discord. Blessings. Mm-hmm.